Shocked! The New York Times put out a story that was wrong? Oh my stars and garters, heavens. How could this have happened? Well, I'm sure once they figured out their story was wrong, they issued a correction, right? Oh. And it's not just the New York Times, it's CNN. I got a couple stories for you. I couldn't pick which one. And I'm thinking to myself, man, you always got to figure out what's the story and why people are interested in it, right? And I'm like, but I got like three stories so far about the fake news. What am I supposed? I'll do all of them. The first story, Navy is said to proceed with disciplinary plans against Edward Gallagher. So for those that aren't following, Trump has pardoned and commuted the sentences of several people accused of war crimes. Now, some of these people have had their rank restored. In one of these instances, this guy, Edward Gallagher, was going to be removed from the SEALs, essentially. And Trump said, we're not going to take away his trident pin. The New York Times reported that top military officials threatened to resign or be fired if their plans to remove Chief Gallagher from the SEALs were halted by President Trump. Guess what? It's not true. This is hilarious. I don't even know how this happened. Check this out. It said Secretary of the Navy and Admiral who leads the SEALs have threatened to resign or be fired. We get that point. The threats by Navy Secretary Richard V. Spencer and the Commander Rear Admiral Colin Green are a rare instance of pushback against Mr. Trump. Man, who would have thought someone would do something like that and come out and say, wait, what's this? Secretary Navy 76, I would like to further state that in no way, shape, or form did I ever threaten to resign. That has been incorrectly reported in the press. I serve at the pleasure of the president. How funny. Fake news from the New York Times. Who would have thought Maggie Haberman put out garbage news? Check this out. It gets better. It's not done. Frank Luntz tweeted this. Here's Maggie Haberman on Twitter saying, quote, the Secretary of the Navy and the Admiral who leads the SEALs have threatened to resign or be fired if plans to expel a commando from the elite unit in a war crimes case are halted by President Trump, administration officials said Saturday. Then this one. Secretary of the Navy 76. The guy's name is Richard V. Spencer. Not the Richard Spencer of Charlottesville. No, this is a different one. Contrary to popular belief, I am still here. I did not threaten to resign. We are here to talk about external threats, and Eddie Gallagher is not one of them. So who am I going to believe? The dude literally saying publicly, I never said that. Or the New York Times. Well, I'm sorry, but it gets better. Check it out. We then saw this. Maggie Haberman responds to Frank Luntz. Now, Frank Luntz is the famous pollster, for those who are not familiar, saying, we stand by the story. Thanks, Frank. Guess what? They didn't. They're liars, man. We stand by the story. And then sure enough, could you imagine what reality are we living in where somebody goes in the press and says, like, imagine it's you, right? And you're watching TV and they say, John Smith announced that he likes chocolate ice cream and that, or that he'll never eat chocolate ice cream again. And you're like, well, I never said that. So you make a public statement. I have never said that. And then they tweet back, you're wrong. We know. Wait, what? How are you going to tell the guy he's literally having to argue with the New York Times about whether or not he threatened to resign, and he keeps saying, I didn't. I didn't do this. Man, truly, truly incredible. Well, now we have this. Check this out. Reuters, U.S. Navy Secretary says he did not threaten to resign in dispute with Trump. And I'm pretty sure this isn't the first time that this happened. I think there was something a while ago about Rick Perry. People were claiming he was threatening to resign, and then he was like, what? I never said that. But I guess he did resign recently, so I don't know. So here's the thing. The New York Times eventually changes the story without notice. That's called a stealth edit. You would think somewhere it would say, I don't know, update, correction, or otherwise. Maybe it's in here somewhere, and they're using language I'm not familiar with, but there's nothing I can see in this story that shows a correction or an update. They don't say anything, right? I don't see correction, this happened. It's just describing the people. Okay, well, guess what? The reason I showed you the first article is that it's an archive, because in the new version it says, the Navy Secretary Richard V. Spencer later denied that he had threatened to resign, but said disciplinary plans against Chief Gallagher would proceed because he did not consider Mr. Trump's statement on Twitter to be a formal order. Mr. Spencer added that the president, as commander-in-chief, had the authority to intervene and that it would stop the process. And that is honorable and correct. Just because Trump, I would not expect him to do anything based on a tweet, right? If Trump tweets, I want Richard V. Spencer to do X, okay, then I'd be like, oh, really? Wow, all right, well, let me know when the orders come in. Because a tweet is not a formal, like you can't just do it. So Trump wouldn't have to make a phone call. So that makes sense. He's like, all right, It's not a formal order. Once Trump, lets me know, we'll see what happens. I'd like to show you one thing real quick. I'd like to show you, this is a video. It's on my Instagram. If you're not following me on Instagram, go to instagram.com/Timcast. Follow me there. I don't post too much. But I'll tell you what, man. I grew up in a world where Fox News was fake news. It was Bill O'Reilly didn't know why the moon, like what caused the tides. Well, Bill O'Reilly's gone. And it's a different Fox News these days. They've brought on more moderate personalities. They've brought on left-wing commentators. They did a town hall for Bernie Sanders. Yeah, Fox News has changed a lot. In this video, I'm watching Fox News on my TV. It's a projector. And I thought to myself, Fox News right now is talking about Iranian protests and Hong Kong. Those are big, very important global issues. What do you think CNN's talking about? So I hit the switch, and sure enough, Orange Man bad. And here's the truth, okay? I've done this like 15 times. I do it periodically. I used to wake up every morning, put on CNN, and then just let the news play. Not because I liked their commentary, but if news would break, they would cover it, right? The general idea is if I'm watching the news, CNN is on, and I don't know, say there's protests in Hong Kong, it would go breaking news. And they would say, right now in Hong Kong, X, Y, and Z. And I would know. At a certain point, CNN stopped reporting on breaking news. They stopped, like, let's say there's like a major, they still do it sometimes depending on the story, but for the most part, how is it now that if I want to learn about Iranian protests, which are sweeping the nation in Iran, and Hong Kong, I got to turn on Fox News. And I switch to CNN, and they're like, Orange Man is bad. So I made this video, and that's what it is. But I can't stop here because I'm gonna go after CNN a little bit more. So let me wrap up that first story. How crazy is it that we're in a world where this dude Richard V. Spencer has to argue with the New York Times about them being wrong, back and forth. He's like, I didn't do this, and then they say, yes, you did. No, I didn't. It's amazing to me, especially when you look at how like Wikipedia works. I could literally say something like. You can look in public record and see that I've donated to Yang and Tulsi months and months and months ago, okay? And it doesn't matter. Literally doesn't matter. It's not a fact. It's not news because the media must say so. So I can literally say something like, I'm actually not a big fan of cheesecake. And the media will report, I am a huge fan of cheesecake, and people will be like, well, the media said it. Tim's opinion on whether he likes it or not doesn't matter. How does any of this make sense? They're desperately trying to cling to the right to control the narrative, even when the people are saying that's not the case. Why should the New York Times have the right to make a statement of fact about an individual doing a thing he denies several times and he has to argue? Well, here's where it gets better, because we're not going to stop at the New York Times. It is a fake news morning. Check this tweet out. Brian Stelter called the Ukrainian meddling story a right-wing conspiracy theory. And he goes, Fiona Hill even mentioned it was a Russian propaganda talking point. Man, I'll tell you what, Brian. When you start believing the opinion of a government official over the due diligence and reporting of several different news outlets, it is you that is the conspiracy theorist. When you start believing that Ukrainian courts and members of parliament in Ukraine are lying about what's really going on, you think that these listen, man, that's a conspiracy theory. I'm not arbitrarily basing my opinions off of a nefarious plot that I've made up in my mind. No, I think Ukrainian meddling happened because we've seen FOIA documents, we've seen sworn affidavits from numerous individuals, coming actually from unrelated cases that overlapped. A member of parliament in Ukraine has made numerous statements about Hunter Biden and Ukraine meddling, and a Ukrainian court has ruled as such. Does that mean I believe it? Like it happened, it's a fact? Not necessarily. It means I think there's more than enough evidence for the U.S. to do an investigation to dig into whether or not there was past meddling or current meddling. But I'll tell you what, meddling's a fact. You can't have both, right? Well, Brian Stelter's calling it a conspiracy theory. So let me point this out. Either the courts are correct and Ukraine was meddling in the 2016 election, or the courts are wrong and for some reason are claiming there was meddling. So I guess the very worst case, like the best case you could make is, oh, it just so happens the MP, the affidavits, they're all just incorrect and it's not a conspiracy, it's an accident. No, we have Andriy Derkach, MP in Ukraine saying, yeah, look at what the Bidens were doing. Okay, what do? Do we just say, oh, they're all wrong, ignore them? Nothing to see here. I said the moment you start claiming that the opinion of an official debunks legitimate reporting from the New York Times, The Hill, and Politico, you stop being a journalist. If you actually think Ukrainian courts are lying to help Russia, then Brian, you're a conspiracy theorist. But in CNN's bizarro world of journalism, government officials' opinions on whether reporting is true supersedes the actual reporting of several journalists who did their due diligence. How amazing is that? CNN. You turn on CNN and what are you going to get? You're going to get beaten over the head by someone just going, Orange man, bad, Orange man. They might as well make it a musical and just sing nonstop. And people just sit there with the sweet hum of how the Orange man is bad. I tell you what, man, CNN, Brian, how come I can turn on Fox News and learn about Iran and Hong Kong, and I turn on you and you're claiming that U.S. government officials are right and their word is law? Don't trust the journalists. That's what Brian's saying. Brian's saying not to trust journalists. And what's funny is Brian actually did a segment where he said, don't listen to Fox News. Really? The Fox News that was covering international conflict and crisis while you were ranting about Orange Man. And look, I understand CNN has probably done segments on those things as well. The point I'm making is, I kid you not, about 15 or so times, I didn't just want to arbitrarily do this. I didn't want to be like, one time I flipped the switch and they were talking about Trump. Well, yeah, but Fox News talks about Trump all the time too. They had Trump on the air for like an hour yesterday. No, I did it like 15 times and finally got fed up. Like, I can't even turn CNN on anymore. When you look at the Project Veritas leaks, you see people talking about how like CNN just does panels. It's like, why send somebody to go report when you can just have a panel of people for dirt come and rant about how the Orange Man is bad? You know what it is? It's because CNN secretly loves Trump. They're pretending not to love Trump, right? They know what he provides them. It is the Trump bomb. Let me show you something. This is an article from the New York Times. That's right. The New York Times, who just put out fake news about Richard V. Spencer. And they also said, Ukraine court rules Manafort disclosure caused, quote, meddling in U.S. election. Wait, what's this? A court in Ukraine has ruled that officials in the country violated the law by revealing, during the 2016 presidential election in the United States, details of suspected illegal payments to Paul Manafort. They say in 2016, while Manafort was chairman of the Trump campaign, anti-corruption prosecutors in Ukraine disclosed that a pro-Russian political party had earmarked payments for Manafort from an illegal slush fund. Mr. Manafort resigned from the campaign a week later. The court's ruling that what the prosecutors did was illegal comes as the Ukrainian government, which is deeply reliant on the United States for financial and military aid, has sought to distance itself from matters related to the special counsel's investigation of Russian interference in the 2016 presidential race. Oh no! The New York Times reporting that Ukrainian courts are concerned that people in their country acted illegally by meddling in the U.S. election. Don't worry, everybody. Brian Stelter says that's just a conspiracy theory. Don't listen to the New York Times. Okay, then which one should I trust? Should I trust the New York Times now when they say there was meddling? Or should I trust CNN now when they say there wasn't? I tell you what, man. The media's desperate grasp on the narrative has collapsed entirely. Because now you've got CNN saying the New York Times is fake news. Literally, Brian Stelter is arguing that The Hill, the New York Times, and Politico are fake news. Brian Stelter argued that a January 2017 story from Politico about Ukrainian meddling, Alexander Chalupa, and digging up dirt was a right-wing conspiracy theory and a Russian propaganda talking point. These people are so terrified of Russia, but you know what's sad, really? They're a shrinking minority. Their companies are collapsing. They're laying people off. And in their desperate bid, they might as well be like Survivor or Fear Factor. You know what? Let's just from now on, no disrespect to Joe Rogan, but CNN's basically just Fear Factor. It's like they're trying to scare you and freak you out as much as possible. They don't actually tell you the news. But that brings me to the final bit of fake news. And yeah, CNN. High-ranking House Democrat says ethics investigation into Devin Nunes is likely following reports the Republican congressman met with fired Ukraine prosecutor to dig up dirt on Joe Biden. Okay, hold on a second. There were no reports that Devin Nunes met with Shokin. There were reports that Lev Parnas's lawyer told CNN that Lev Parnas said that Shokin told him that Shokin met with Devin Nunes. Now, according to the Daily Mail, it is true that Nunes traveled to Europe in December, but Nunes says it is false. I think, let me get his exact comment. These demonstrably false and scandalous stories published by the Daily Beast and CNN are the perfect examples of defamation and reckless disregard for the truth. Some political operative offered these fake stories to at least 5 different media outlets before finding someone irresponsible enough to publish them. So let's do a stop right now. CNN, Brian Stelter. You know what, Brian? Because I met Brian a while ago, and I've known him for a while. It's not like we know each other very, very well, but we've crossed paths in several instances. I think Brian has officially crossed over into evil territory, and I don't say that lightly. But Brian, if you're listening, I hope you look in the mirror and take a look at what you've become. It is shocking to me. Maybe you've always been this, okay? But let me break down how journalism works for you. When the New York Times says, hey, a court said this in Ukraine, and here's the breakdown, it doesn't mean it's true. It means, hey, we have probable cause to believe this may be the case. When The Hill reports this, and I'm not talking about John Solomon, I'm talking about other elements at The Hill, along with John Solomon, but you can smear John all you like. When Politico reported definitively in January of 2017, Ken Vogel, this happened. You can't call it a conspiracy. But what's mind-blowing, and the reason I say evil, is that Brian Stelter now, in my opinion, is doing this for the ratings. To take the word of one government official who has an opinion about a story, and CNN even publishes gossip from a corrupt individual who is indicted, who claims the supposedly corrupt prosecutor is saying he has dirt on Devin Nunes. How is that news? Nothing is confirmed. But you go ahead and report it. And I'll tell you what. By all means, let's see what Devin Nunes was doing in Europe. I absolutely want to. You know why? Because I actually believe in journalism. And I think if there is a claim floating around, it warrants a glance, a once-over, perhaps a Google search. Turns out Devin Nunes did go to Europe. Okay. Well, now I think we can clear things up by just looking at his travel schedule and figuring out where he actually went. And if he met with Shokin, then we're still a long ways away from doing anything wrong. Why would he face an ethics probe if he met with Ukrainian prosecutor? If you want to claim he did it to dig up dirt, you got to prove that first. So before you do an ethics probe, you'll need evidence that it was to dig up dirt. So you can listen, I'll tell you what. Brian Stelter is consistently the person telling you to close your eyes and cover your ears. To me, he is trying to willfully manipulate you. And I assume it's mostly just for the ratings. I mean, he's got a Sunday morning show. I can't imagine it's the most watched show, but it does appear on airports across the country and in other parts of the world, and it is in hotel lobbies. So there's influence there. And I'm not trying to be a dick. That's a fact. You're walking through an airport. You're going to hear what these people are saying, whether you're an actual viewer or not. But I'll tell you what. Let me ask you this. What would the reason be for someone like Brian Stelter to tell people not to listen to other outlets? What would the reason be? Why would Brian Stelter tell you, trust the government? Trust the government. Ignore the journalists. The journalists are wrong. Something doesn't add up there. Something is creepy. And in my opinion, the orange man bad narrative is lucrative, and CNN knows it. They know their ratings. Look, CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC are actually seeing ratings drop. The reason why there's actually an uptick every so often is because of Trump. So year over year, all of these networks are losing viewers to digital, but Trump is helping them keep floating as long as possible. I can only imagine if you're someone like Brian Stelter, who's got a Sunday morning show, and you're pretty much first on the chopping block as it is. I mean, you're not Don Lemon or Anderson Cooper. You're going to do everything in your power to make sure your ratings are up. So here's what they do. Oliver Darcy and Brian Stelter have on all of the people who say the same thing, and it's basically just I'm going to avoid using the adult term, but it is a massage circle where everyone sits in a circle massaging each other's back. I'm using the family-friendly version of I think you get what I'm trying to say. They just bring people in who say, that's absolutely right, Brian, that's true. And they ignore all the actual reporting. Heavens, could you imagine if Brian Stelter brought in a real journalist to be like, how can you debunk the New York Times, The Hill, and Politico just by saying an opinion is a fact? It doesn't matter what Fiona Hill thinks. I respect her opinion. She's an expert. I will weigh that against the reporting. The reporting should include what she thinks about it. But when you have FOIA documents, affidavits, or otherwise, and I'll throw it back to this. When you have the New York Times straight up publishing fake news and standing by it, you know what, man? These people are duplicitous liars, or they're just like, I don't know, what's the right word? Like, they bumped their head one too many times when they were young. We'll put it that way. No, but I think it's intentional, and I think it's for clicks. I really, really do. I think most people, I believe a lot of people really hate the president, but it's because they're told to. It's like the media keeps saying these things over and over again, and they publish fake news. I think if you get rid of the rage for the sake of rage, like the losers who are angry they lost, and take a look at what actual Americans think, you'll be surprised to learn, like me and many others, most Americans are ambivalent. It's like, Trump's kind of a bombastic. He's the way he speaks, his tweets, it's inappropriate. I don't know, whatever. We'll vote for somebody else. Is it the end of the world? It's not. Most people do not think that's the case, but there are a lot of activists who do, and they make up a small portion of this country. So when you look at what the news is doing, they're out of their minds. I'll leave it there. You get the point. It's a fake news morning. Man, we got inundated with all this fake news. So let me just make that final point about the ethics investigation into Nunes. CNN and the Daily Beast reported on third-degree hearsay, like as per usual. From that hearsay, with no evidence, Democrats are now saying on an ethics investigation is, I kid you not, he said what's it? It's a really, really funny quote. Quite likely, most definitely, or something like that. Let me just make sure I get this right. He says, quite likely, without question. That's like saying probably, definitely. Quite likely, without question. What? So you're saying without question, it will be quite likely, which means not likely at all? Whatever, man. These people are nuts. But you know what? Guys, here's the sad news. The economy's doing great. That's all people care about. It's a fact. I mean, look, activists care about climate change. A bunch of climate change people just raided a football field. But I tell you what, when it comes to that voting booth, people are going to be like, I got money in my pocket. We'll see what happens on Black Friday and Christmas. Ad sales are going to be up. Sales in general are going to be skyrocketing. We're going to have a strong consumer base. We'll see what happens. I'll leave it there. I'll leave you with one final thought. I always do this, right? I'm like, one last thing. Listen to Brian Stelter. Watch his show. Watch MSNBC. Watch Fox News. Watch me. Watch David Pakman. Watch Sam Cedar. Watch Joe Rogan. Watch as much as you can. Make sure you're not only listening to one person over and over again, especially me. They will tell you the opposite. They will say, don't go anywhere. Don't change that dial. They're lying. Shh, come here. Come into my warm bosom. No, man. If you really want to know what's going on, you need to make sure you listen to as many people as possible. Read the articles, check the sources. There is a reason why I always show the sources in all my videos the way I do, because people tried accusing me of lying and taking clips out of context, so you can't do that anymore. The source is here. I use a third-party rating agency for all of it. I am trying my best. These evil people who have infiltrated journalism have destroyed it from the inside out. Maybe we'll fix it. I'll see you all in the next segment at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out.